Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus Bets. What is up, folks? I am your host, the DJ Doc, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Look, it is Christmas Eve, and it's a very special live edition because the NFL has gifted us two primetime matchups tomorrow on Wednesday, Christmas Day. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs heading to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers, and the Baltimore Ravens heading to Houston to take on the Texans. Four teams squarely in the playoffs, all clinched playoff spots. So a special gift from the NFL. Look, folks, happy holidays. Hope you are home, off work, and getting ready to enjoy some festivities for the holidays. You know what's festive? Being able to hang around with family, drink, be merry, and cash some bets. And that's what we're hoping to do today, folks. As always, we're going to do breakdown. We're going to do some injury analysis, and then we're going to get into the actionable information. So without further ado, let's get started. First up, we have the 14-1 Kansas City Chiefs heading to the 10-5 Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, folks, this is going to be an absolutely amazing matchup here. The Chiefs can clinch the number one seed if they win this game. And on the Pittsburgh side, the AFC North becomes that much more attainable with the victory, right? You have the Baltimore Ravens right now nipping at their heels, both teams 10-5. We will talk about Baltimore here in a second. But if Pittsburgh wants to win the AFC North, they have to win this game. So really both teams with a ton to play for here. Right now you have Kansas City laying 3 on the road as road favorites there. -3, -102, money line at -145. The home dog Pittsburgh Steelers catching 3 at a juiced -118. Money line sitting at around +130. Over under sitting around 44. For this side, not a ton of injuries, which is great, but there are some impactful injuries that we have to talk about here. So we'll start with the visiting Kansas City Chiefs. No DJ Humphries, who they brought in to be that blindside protection for Patrick Mahomes. That left tackle there, he is out, still dealing with that hamstring injury. You also have defensive back, kind of nickel back, who's been filling in, Shamari Connors. He's out with a concussion. And still, Jaylen Watson, and I mentioned him, he went out, many weeks ago at this point, still on the IR. He's just such a huge part of what that secondary was able to do. So you still have a couple guys beat up there on the back end. Some questionable guys. You got right tackle Jawan Taylor, questionable with the knee injury. He did have limited practice all week, so would expect some more optimism here. But the other one, the one that I'm not expecting to be out there, defensive tackle Chris Jones, one of the best players in the NFL, arguably, I don't even know if it's argument, probably the best player on that defense for the Kansas City Chiefs. He picked up a calf injury just Saturday, 4 days ago in their game against the Texans, and he did not practice the first 2 days. Now, he was upgraded to a limited practice. Now, Chiefs didn't really practice today. It was just a walkthrough, so it's really just an estimation. So I'm not sure, if they saw him really do anything, but we're talking about 4 days to recover and go play an NFL football game, which, I understand coming off the Sunday to Thursday night, but this is 3 games in 11 days. This is tough. So, I think as much as the Chiefs want to win this, I believe they err on the side of caution as far as not letting Chris Jones play. However, I expected him to be also listed as doubtful. So I'm a little bit kind of shocked that he is listed as questionable. I'm still not expecting him to play, but there's a chance. Clearly, the Chiefs are leaving the door open. Typically, a mild calf strain, you're thinking about 1 to 3 weeks recovery timeline. They're also notorious soft tissue injuries. They're notorious for re-injury. So that's kind of why I'm leaning towards they should probably let him rest. And I think Andy Reid is a very smart coach. You do not want to lose Chris Jones for the postseason, right? So I think that the Kansas City Chiefs could probably get this done without Chris Jones. But we'll see. So the door is still left open. Patrick Mahomes, obviously good to go with his ankle. Xavier Worthy picked up a little bit of an ankle injury last week, but he's going to be good to go. Now, for the Pittsburgh Steelers side, they've got a couple guys out. Ben Skoranek, a guy who's kind of been filling in with George Pickens in, but George Pickens is back this week, thankfully for the Pittsburgh offense. They will not be having to be so anemic at the wide receiver room. But the big one's Joey Porter Jr., cornerback, their best cover cornerback for the Steelers. He is going to be out. Says he's going to be out likely until the rest of the regular season, until the playoffs. That's where they're hoping to get him back with a knee injury there. The only other guy questionable is Justin Fields. He's limited practice with abdominal, but you're getting some guys back here for Pittsburgh. George Pickens is the massive one. He is coming back off that hamstring injury, full practice. He's not even on the injury report. Neither is Larry Ogunjobi, defensive tackle, cornerback Dante Jackson, or safety Deshaun Elliott. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are getting healthier. They're bringing a decent amount of guys back, but really the two guys out for me, and Chris Jones and Joey Porter Jr. make a huge difference, right? I guess Chris Jones not officially ruled out. But yeah, let's talk about how I think this game's going to go, and let's get into those bets. I know someone was asking here, Nahal, what are the bets worthy for tomorrow? Well, my friend, it's that time because we're going to talk about these bets here. So we're going to start, obviously, with the game here with the Chiefs and the Steelers. For the side, going back and forth with this one. I don't love either side. Both teams really need it. Really, I think Kansas City could get it done, but I could see this being a 1 or 2 point game, so I'm not going to lay the 3 there. What I do like is the over. I like the over 44 points here. I think that both these teams' passing offenses are going to be able to have a little bit of a day here. So you've got for the Steelers, I talked about Joey Porter Jr., their best corner, he's out. Right. So now you got Dante Jackson and Corey Trice and some guys needing to fill in. This secondary has really kind of been ravaged and been used and abused these past couple weeks. And I think with the return of Hollywood Brown, which we'll get to in a little bit, I think, Patrick Mahomes being healthier on that ankle, even last week, he was doing some things through the air. I think that the passing offenses are going to have to come alive. And the return of George Pickens cannot be overstated for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Whether you look at total yards per game, whether you look at points per game, it just shoots up. The offense looks completely different. So I like this to be a little bit higher scoring of affair. I think it's going to be back and forth. So I think both teams are going to be in the 20s. I think this is kind of, a 21-24, 24-27 type game. So that's where I'm going with the over there. Now getting to the actual props, what I like here. We got a few here. So we're going to start with a fun one. We're going to start with the defense. It's going to be Nick Bolton, Chiefs linebacker, under 2.5 assists, minus 135. We're laying some juice here, but this has only happened 3 times this season. Whether Chris Jones is in there or not, I think that both these teams are stout against the run. I think they're going to be airing it out a bit more. And I think, Nick Bolton is someone who he is the leading tackler for the Chiefs, but the large majority of those tackles are solo tackles. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of gang tackle situations. I think they're going to spread them out. They're going to have, George Pickens, whatever it may be. But I don't think we're going to see a ton of Najee just getting spammed up the middle, kind of halfback dive. So I'm going to go under there on Nick Bolton's assist for his tackles. Some overs I am going to take. We're going to start with this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Calvinaustin, over 24.5 receiving yards and minus 120. This is a guy who has really stepped up and built some nice chemistry with Russell Wilson since George Pickens has been out. And I think now George Pickens takes the eyes and the attention of the defense because GP, he is that game breaker. You have to make sure you're game planning for George Pickens. Not a lot of defenses are game planning for Calvin Austin. I also talked about, look, this Chiefs secondary coming in the year was one of the best in the league. When Jaylen Watson went out and they picked up some other injuries, Jamari Connors is going to be out. They're going to have to kind of fill some guys in there. We saw Tank Dell last week having one of his best games. Unfortunately, ended with the injury, which we'll talk about in a second. But Calvin Austin plays that slot role. So I like Calvin Austin to get over 24.5 receiving yards. He's also a big play guy. He's kind of runs under some of those Russell Wilson moon balls. So I don't think it's going to take a lot of catches, really only 2 for him to get to this 24.5 number. Another guy I like the receiving game, Jaylen Warren, 25-plus receiving yards out of the backfield there at plus 130. He's hit this in the last 3 out of his 4 games. I think this is going to be a little bit more of a shootout environment. I think this is a little bit more of a Jaylen Warren game. We saw Jaylen Warren out-touch Najee Harris last week. I think we see something similar here. I think he just brings more pop out of the backfield, whether it's in the screen game or whether it's just, Russell Wilson dumping it off to him when he's in trouble. So I do like Jaylen Warren, 25-plus receiving yards at plus 130. And then on the Chiefs side, I think there's 2 guys I'm particularly targeting. Yes, I've spoken about. Look, I think the passing games is kind of where I see this going. It's why I think it's going to be higher scoring. Noah Gray, tight end number 2, but the 3rd leading receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs this season, over 14.5 receiving yards. minus 115. I also like his over 1.5 receptions. I think this is just entirely too low. Again, he's the third leading receiver for this offense, almost 500 yards on the year, and 14.5 is just way too low of a number. Now, Pittsburgh Steelers, notorious for being bad against the tight end. Whether it's even backups. Grant Calcaterra hit him for a long reception just a couple weeks ago. Mark Andrews was able to get loose. Isaiah Likely was able to get loose against them last week. Pittsburgh and the tight end. Ask any Pittsburgh Steelers fan. They can't cover the damn tight end. So I like Noah Gray there. He's also hit these numbers in 6 out of the last 7 games that he's played. Last week, he kind of got banged up a little bit. That was his only week. In the past 7 weeks, he hasn't hit this number. So I love Noah Gray there. I also will be on a couple of his ladders, 25 plus, 40 plus. I think he could have a little bit of a day. Because let's be honest, Minka Fitzpatrick and those guys, they're going to be keying on Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is not your typical tight end. So, he makes the game plan. Noah Gray doesn't make the game plan, and that's great for us to take opportunity there. The other guy is Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown came back in his first game. We didn't know how many snaps he was going to get. He had 8 targets for 45 yards. No Joey Porter Jr. I think that these Kansas City wide receivers are going to be able to have a little bit of their way with this, unfortunately, not very good Pittsburgh Steelers secondary. So I like Hollywood Brown, 50-plus receiving yards at plus 135. I think that him and Patrick Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes knows he needs Hollywood Brown to win playoff games. They talked about their chemistry in the offseason. He was going out of his way to target him. I think this is a good matchup where Hollywood Brown is easily going to get over this 50-yard mark. All right, folks, that's it for the first game, but we've got another one. We've got a great one to follow up this game here. We got the Houston Texans and the Baltimore Ravens. The 10-5 Baltimore Ravens are traveling to the 9-6 Houston Texans there at NRG Stadium. Another game here where it should be close. I think it's going to be closer than what Vegas thinks. We've got Baltimore laying 5.5 on the road. Money line sitting at around minus 245. Houston catching 5.5 at home. Money line right around 2-1 home dogs. Over under at 46.5. On the injury situation here, pretty cut and dry. You've got a couple of guys out for the Ravens. You got Justice Hill, Nelson Aguilar dealing with some concussions. And then backup cornerback Jalen Davis dealing with a hamstring. The one guy who is questionable for them is Zay Flowers. There is optimism that he is going to play. Jim Harbaugh said, the first week of practice or first day of practice, he does expect Flowers to be out there. He had 2 straight DNPs, and then he had a limited practice today. So I would say he's more probable than anything. I do expect Zay Flowers to be out there. Houston's a little more beat up. Obviously, Tank Dell, hopefully everything is going well with him. It's going to be something multi-ligament knee injury. It's going to be multiple surgeries. It's not exactly the same, but you can kind of put it in the Nick Chubb bucket as it's going to be tough for him to really produce next season, especially in the first half. So really unfortunate for him, but obviously the rest of the season, Tank Dell's out and definitely on tomorrow. Jimmy Ward is also one that is noteworthy. One of their leading tacklers there out of the secondary picked up a foot injury. He's on the IR. He's going to be done for the season. Defensive tackle Foley Fadakasu, he's going to be out with an ankle. And then 2 linemen, Shaq Mason and Juice Scruggs, a guard and backup center there, are going to be out for the Texans. John Mechie is expected to be back. He's not on the injury report. Deontay Johnson, former Steeler, Panther, Raven, now Houston Texan, he was claimed by the Texans, but just on Monday, so I don't expect he's going to get a ton of work, if any snaps. So that's the injury situation here. Now, unlike the other game, I do like a side in this game, and I like the Texans cashing 5.5 at home. I understand, Tank Dell went down. They're dealing with a bit of injuries here, but, I don't think the Baltimore Ravens, especially earlier in the season, they were not a team that was really blowing teams out and really winning convincingly, right? I think they can definitely go on the road and get this done, but I think 5.5 points against another playoff team is just entirely too much. I know they just came off a game where they beat up Pittsburgh pretty bad, but that was a very uncharacteristic game. The Pittsburgh, a Baltimore rivalry, that was like an anomaly, Russell Wilson, that pick 6 and that fumble really changed that game. And I see a much more competitive game here. I particularly think that the Houston Texans are going to be able to hang around because they're going to be able to exploit this bad secondary. This Baltimore secondary is a liability for them. They're giving up 255 yards per game and 26 passing touchdowns on the year. I know they've kind of moved some things around with where they put Kyle Hamilton and things like that, but I still think they have trouble guarding alpha wide receivers. And Nico Collins is an alpha wide receiver. I understand Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs are out for the season. Last season, there was no Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell was out. And we saw what CJ Stroud and Nico Collins did. And, I think whether you get Deontay Johnson out there, John Mechie or Robert Woods, Xavier Hutchinson, some of these other guys, I don't think this Ravens secondary has anyone that can lock him down. I know Marlon Humphrey is a good corner. I know he had that pick six, but he's not a lockdown cornerback. He's not going to be matched up with Nico Collins. And if he is, I like Nico Collins in that matchup. So I think that CJ Stroud in this passing game can make some work here of the Ravens. I also think that, this secondary for the Houston Texans, I think that they have 19 interceptions on the year. I think that they can make Lamar throw a couple, have a couple mistakes to where they keep this game close. So I do like the Houston Texans catching 5.5 at home. Also think from a motivation standpoint, they want to do right by Tank Dell, right? It was obviously a huge kind of emotional injury. It was very tough for them to kind of play immediately after. I think that, CJ Stroud is ready to have a game. And that's kind of going to lead me into some of my props right here. I'm going to go CJ Stroud, 250 plus passing yards at plus 100. The Baltimore Ravens on average give up 255 yards per game. Again, I understand no Stephon Diggs, no Tank Dell, but he still has Nico Collins. He's got Dalton Schultz. He's got, John Mechie and a slew of other guys. And the secondary is just not prepared to take on an alpha wide receiver. So in conjunction, I like Nico Collins, 100 plus receiving yards at plus 105. I'm going to keep it pretty simple here. I think that the Houston Texans are going to be able to pass on the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, CJ Stroud is going to be the beneficiary, but I think Nico Collins in particular is going to have a massive game. So that's what I'm calling for here. I also like CJ Stroud to have over 11.5 rush yards. This is kind of, primetime situation. He's hit the last 5 games. And one of the abilities that I'm going to talk about, or one of the areas that the Baltimore Ravens are going to exploit, is their pressure rate. They have 47 sacks on the season, while the Houston Texans have given up 46 sacks. Now, you've already got a couple linemen out for this game for the Houston Texans. I think CJ Stroud is going to have to run the ball some. He's going to be forced out of the pocket, and I think he's going to scamper into some of these, situations there. We saw Russell Wilson run for like his longest rush of his career. Now, he did ultimately fumble, but there's obviously, based on the pressure situations and the way the Ravens play coverage, there's opportunities where CJ Stroud is going to be able to use his legs. So I like CJ Stroud on the ground as well. Another guy I like on the ground, this one makes a little bit more sense, right? Lamar Jackson, 50-plus rushing yards at plus 115. His mama told him, hey, after that Eagles loss, you need to run more. And he listened. I mean, he had 50-plus receiving yards in 2 out of the last 3 games. Now, last game, he didn't pick that up. And that's because the Pittsburgh Steelers, they know Lamar, and they really are good at handling running quarterbacks. I mean, they played Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson. Coming into that Baltimore game, they had only given up 43 or 48 yards all year to the quarterback. So that's what they do. I take that a lot less on Lamar, and I take that much more on that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers do. They contain the quarterback, but not the Houston Texans. This is different. I think you have Will Anderson and you have Danielle Hunter coming off the edge. Just like I talked about with CJ Stroud, that pressure is going to lead to some running opportunities. I think they'll have some design run opportunities there. And this Texans run defense, giving up 107 yards per game, 4.3 yards per carry. Obviously, they're going to be wanting to be focused on stopping Derrick Henry. It's going to give some opportunities for Lamar to pull it and get some there. So give me Lamar 50-plus rushing. And I talked about Baltimore having an edge on their defensive line compared to the Houston Texans offensive line, especially in pressure rate. Baltimore Ravens have 47 sacks on the year. The Houston Texans giving up 46 sacks and going to be out 2 offensive linemen in this game. I'm going to sprinkle on the 2 that they have available right now, at least over at DraftKings. Kyle Vannoy over a quarter of a sack. He's got 10.5 sacks on the year. That's at plus 110. And then Odafeoweh at plus 155 over a quarter of a sack. He's got 8 on the year. Pretty simple. These 2 guys lead the Ravens in sacks. These are the guys that I think that are going to have an opportunity to sack CJ Stroud. So just a quick recap here, folks. I like there to be some points in the first game with the Chiefs and the Steelers. I like both passing offenses to get going a little bit, particularly Calvin Austin, Jaylen Warren, Noah Gray, and Hollywood Brown. And for the second game, I like the Houston Texans to keep it close at home against the Baltimore Ravens. I like cjstroud through the air, on the ground, nicocollins, lamarjackson to get them things done on the ground, and kylevannoy and odafeoweh to have over a quarter of a sack. All right, folks, that is it. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please give us a like and subscribe. Let us know. Give us your feedback, what you liked, what you didn't like. Most importantly, I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas to all you guys. Enjoy the time with the family and tail the bets. Have a little bit of fun. Nothing like having some action for the holidays. Tell your family, tell your cool cousins that you go on walks with at the holiday time. Hey, there's some bets I got from this guy. I think we get down on them, and let's see if they hit. So happy holiday, folks. From here, and all of us here at IDP Plus, we wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all that good stuff. And we will see you next week for another live. Next week should be back to normal with the Thursday night game. And then don't worry, I'm still doing my 6 favorite prop bets. That'll be out probably Thursday, Friday. I'll have to figure that out. But definitely check that out for the rest of the week. Other than that, folks, I am out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.